Leicester City, perhaps one of the biggest surprises of the 2022-23 Premier League season was Leicester's relegation. They started poorly and then just didn't get any better. Brendan Rodgers was given the boot. They brought in Dean Smith temporarily. It wasn't enough though, and on the final day, they were confirmed as being relegated to the Championship. Since that point, they've brought in a new manager quite recently actually. Enzo Maresca is that man. He was Pep's assistant manager at Manchester City, and he's been chosen to try and lead the revival, try and lead the club back to the Premier League. In today's video, I'm going to take on that role as Enzo Maresca. I'm going to try and be realistic in my approach and thinking about how he might try to lead Leicester back to the Premier League. I'm going to make some signings, make some transfers. I'm going to set up the team in a way that Maresca could go about setting up the team. Something like Pep's system at Manchester City could be quite fun to do. And I'm going to go and see if I can realistically take Leicester City back to the Premier League. Should be fun. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another one of these realistic rebuild videos where we try and take a realistic approach to a club's transfer business for this summer. I love to look into the details of who a club is linked with, who they might go and sign, who's out there on the market. Transfers, I find them completely fascinating, so that's why I do these videos. Just to mention, today we're doing Leicester, and Leicester, of course, have been relegated to the Championship. Just to mention on the realistic thing for today, there are a few FM constraints that make this a little less realistic in some ways, which we'll touch upon when we go through the video, but I've tried to take an approach as realistic as possible. I've tried to look at who's actually been linked with the club. I've tried to set them up in a tactic that hopefully is something they try and replicate in real life. Obviously, as well, with the new manager, Enzo Maresca, coming in, we don't know an awful lot about how he's going to set up a team. So there's a bit of guesswork going on there, but I'm sure you can all agree that it's good fun to speculate on these things. As I mentioned, though, Leicester is today's team, who are now, of course, in the Championship. Here is the updated database that I'm using today, which shows them in the Championship table. Look, alongside other relegated teams like Leeds and Southampton down here, it's going to be a truly, truly competitive Championship season. I wanted to mention before we start this as well, though, that looking at the season preview, we are big favourites to go back up as champions with this 1-4 odds. I'd expect us to hopefully do a bit of business. There are going to be some other players that leave as well. I've set the team up in a way that is something like they might have done last season with Brendan Rodgers. They did have Dean Smith in between that time as well, which was slightly different, but something like this is what we're working with as a squad to start with. We've already had a couple of players come in real life too, which has been replicated in this database too. We've got Connor Cody, look down here. He is one of them. And of course, Harry Winks is the other one as well. It's decent money that's being splashed by a Championship team. About £10 million for Winks, £7 million for Cody, or the other way around, but about £17 million for two players already. I think they will do other business. I think Maresca's going to want his men to set up in his system, but I don't expect the system to be too much like this. I wanted to show you the squad before I do the transfers because I wanted to show you that there might be some other players to leave this as well. Look at players like James Justin. I think he's going to want to go and get football elsewhere. Players like Harvey Barnes, will he get a move this summer? Ndidi, will he go with Rodgers taking over at Celtic? Will he go there? Will we see some other players going there? When a club gets relegated, there are going to be outgoings, aren't they? Will Vardy stay? They've got Iheanacho, they've got Patson Daka. I think at least one of those will go between them. I'm going to try and do my best to replicate that as realistically as I can when I do some transfers in a second. But before I do that, I want to show you the way that I'm going to set up the team. What tactic we're going to go with for Enzo Maresca to play is this one here. It's a little bit wild, it's a little bit crazy, but he's talked about wanting to play really attacking football where he gets the players on the ball, possession-based football. And he's been the assistant manager for Pep Guardiola. So I've got this tactic here called Pep from Wish, where we've got these three defenders. We've got these players dropping into the midfield. You've got the John Stones role. You've got these players that come from deep and burst forward. You've got these shadow strikers and supporting wingers. You've got these defensive wingers, which are kind of like wing backs. It's a lot of fun, this system. It is replicating in lots of ways what Pep has been playing at Manchester City. And I think it's going to be fun to do that in today's video. So what I'm about to do is go and do some transfer business to try and set up this squad, as you see it right here, right now, in the best way to try and win the league and get us back up to the Premier League this, the first time of asking. I'm hoping we can have some fun with this. I'm going to go and do some transfers. I suppose we should go and do that right now, shouldn't we? Before we do transfers, though, actually, just to say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like this as an idea and you want to see more videos like this, please do subscribe, because we're aiming for 50,000 subscribers before the end of FM23. We're on 44,000. I think it's possible we can do this. If you think this is funny, if you like these videos, you want to see me go and do a Southampton one, maybe a Leeds one, maybe some of the teams that have been promoted. We did Luton. Maybe we could go and do one or two of those other teams as well. I think that's fun. Subscribe to the channel and we'll go and do that. Like the video too, and leave me those comments. Leicester fans especially, I want to hear from you. What do you make of everything that I'm doing right now? But that's enough waffling and begging you guys to subscribe, etc. Let's get into these transfers. Okay, so transfer business done. And I suppose we should have a look at them. Here they are. This is the overview, and just something to mention before we actually get into them fully. Some of the transfer fees are obviously going to be different to real life because I'm using FM. There are obviously going to be changes between the two of them. So don't pay too much attention to them. Just generally know that I've sold way more than I've brought in anyway. So actually it doesn't matter too much if we've got too much money for players or we've actually not paid enough for players, etc. I think it balances out okay, but obviously I did just want to mention that there, especially when you look at this list here and see that £32 million was received for Youri Tielemans. I couldn't let him go on a free because of the database, so I had to get a fee for him, and just one of those things with FM, isn't it? I've tried to do it as realistically as possible. Just know that as we go through. But some of them are old ones as well, like Wesley Fofana on here. Obviously went to Chelsea a long time ago, but just don't pay too much attention to the transfer fees is what I would say. I've done it completely all in FM legitimately. There's a lot of players gone out. Let's go through some of those big outs actually as well then. So Fofana, we know about. Tielemans, we knew about. James Maddison went to Spurs. It was about £40 million in real life, but just 20 on here. I've sold Timothy Castagne. I think there will be Premier League clubs interested in him. He's gone to Everton for £20 million. I've tried to be realistic that if a player was likely to leave in real life and we got a bid in FM, I've decided to sell them because I think that happens in the Championship. There may be one or two that stick around. Most of them will go though, and you kind of have to rebuild and build with like young players and try and get back to the Premier League from there, and then recruit at that point. Usually that's the pattern, isn't it? Castagne was one of those. He's gone to Everton. Harvey Barnes has got a move too, £17 million to Leipzig. Iheanacho has gone to Villa. He was the one out of the two. I said Daka or Iheanacho was going to go. It's ended up being Iheanacho in this one here. £15 million for Villa. I think he could be a really good signing for a Premier League team. Anyway, Kelechi Iheanacho. Ndidi has gone. He didn't go to Celtic as I speculated at the start of the video. He went to Spurs for 15 mil. I don't think Spurs are going to be buying him for that much money. He's really not looked like... he's looked a complete shadow of the player that he used to be, Wilfred Ndidi, for a couple of seasons now, hasn't he? They've also sold Danny Ward to Hoffenheim for £5 million. I think they'd bite your hand off for that type of money for him. Vestergaard's gone. We knew about Schmeichel a long time ago. And then most of these here are just freeze or reserve type players anyway. Dennis Pratt being one to look at. He's gone on loan. James Justin, I couldn't sell him. I found it really difficult to sell him, but I think realistically he's going to want to move. Just on FM, maybe it was his wages, maybe it was just that he was happy at Leicester. I'm not quite sure. I found it really difficult to move him out, so I've ended up loaning him. I think realistically he's probably going to go on a permanent transfer if he does leave the club. Maybe he will stay. I'm not quite sure, but I've ended up loaning him to Liverpool just so that I could do what I expect to happen, which is that he would leave the club. Those are the outs. So let's look at the ins then, and these ones are interesting. Just a heads up and a note, these players that I've highlighted from Cody down to Opoku are ones that have happened in real life or have had to be replicated again in the game because they've happened in real life. Connor Cody, some of the fees are obviously different too. Cody was a little bit more than the £2 million. I do find it interesting already that there is a Manchester City signing in there because they come up quite heavily in the players that I've signed down here. Look, City coming up. That link with Maresca and City is something I think we're going to see in real life because he was Pep's assistant manager. He knows these young players at City, and Pep knows that he can trust sending his youngsters to Maresca now at Leicester. They're going to play a type of football that is going to actually develop them. I think it's something we're going to expect to see quite a lot of in real life. But these players here then, from Pirro down to Jed Spence, are the players that I've signed this first season in my realistic manner to try and get Leicester back to the Premier League. Let's start with the first one. João Pirro is a young Dutch footballer who plays as a striker. He plays for Swansea, where he scored a lot of goals in the Championship most recently. He is, I think, the type of player that they could bring in. When we say about recruiting for the Championship, with players like Iheanacho going and potentially Daka too, I think one or the other, but maybe a striker is somebody they'd look for. I think this guy has got Championship pedigree. I think he could be a really useful signing for them. He wouldn't cost too much as well. £9 million is what I've paid for him. Maybe slightly less than that in real life, but he's the first one that I brought in. I think he's going to bolster us and help us. Callum Doyle is next up, the first of our City loanees. He's a young centre-back with players like Wilfred Ndidi potentially on the way out, with other defenders moving too. They are going to need to bring in some centre-backs. Maybe a young one from Man City would make sense. I'd actually love them to go and do like Harwood Bellis from City. I think that would be really cool too, but maybe a little bit I think they'll probably look for a Premier League move or a Premier League loan for him rather than Leicester, but maybe, just maybe it could happen. Callum Doyle, though, is the one that I've gone for. I've seen a few links to him in real life, and I think he looks good as a youngster. I think that one makes a lot of sense, has some legs. Next up, James McAtee. I've actually signed him on a permanent here. Maybe there will be some permanent moves between City and Leicester as well. James McAtee looks like he could be one. He's got that under-21 cap there. He's a youngster again, 19 years old. Will sit in that midfield, maybe play a little bit further forward if you need to, in this with the two volantes that I'm going to use in this system. He's the first one, £10 million. I don't think it's too unrealistic for Leicester. Maybe that's a lot of money to spend in the Championship, but they've proven that they're going to do that anyway with the signings of Winks and Cody. So, do you know what? I feel like they could do one or two more if they only go for some loans from here. And then finally, two really important loans. Cole Palmer, I think he needs a loan this year. He did play quite a bit of football for Pep last year at City, but now that this opportunity has arisen with Maresca at Leicester almost rhymes. Cole Palmer to Leicester, I think, be a great bit of business. I think he needs a loan. He's shown he's got talent, but I feel like he needs genuine week in, week out football now, because I think City fans got a little bit frustrated with him potentially. I think a loan to Leicester could make a lot of sense, and I think he'd do really well there. He is the penultimate one. The final one is Jed Spence. He's another one that needs first team football. His move to Spurs hasn't really reaped any first team appearances so far. He was great at Forest in their promotion season from Middlesbrough. You thought maybe he would either go back to Middlesbrough or maybe would play for Forest in the Premier League. In the end, he was just on Spurs' bench all season. A season with Leicester, as they probably come back up from the Championship, could do his development the world of good. So he's one that I could also see could fill in for James Justin moving and Timothy Castagna moving as well. I've put these players then, these signings, into a system. Let's have a look at that system, this Pep from Wish system. If the squad looked anything like this, or if the 11 looked like this, I think we're looking at a really, really strong season from Leicester this year. Let's go from the bottom to the top here with the goalkeeper. Daniel Everson. They've been linked with a few goalkeepers. Players like, I think they were linked with James Trafford before he ultimately moved to Burnley. I think they've been linked with the Zach Steffen from Manchester City. I wanted to do that in the game, but I couldn't actually sign him in FM. So we're going to go with Everson. I think it's going to be fine. We've got a defensive suitor, Cody and Wout Faz, which I think is brilliant for the Championship. They've got some good backups there like Callum Doyle that we brought in as well. The midfield, or really we've got wing backs here, but I'm playing them as defensive wingers. Jed Spence and Luke Thomas. Luke Thomas getting some first team football would not be the worst thing, I think, for his development in the Championship. Him on the left, Jed Spence on the right. Dewsbury Hall and Winks, I think, is a great midfield. Honestly, for the Championship, that's a fantastic midfield too. Then you've got Hamza Chowdhury on the bench as well if you need him. And then in front of him, you've got Joel Pirot and Cole Palmer in behind Patson Daka. They can rotate. Basically, any of them can play as the striker as well if you needed them to. You've got Jamie Vardy off the bench too, which is a great weapon to have in the Championship as well. Samari's down there on the bench. You've got Lewis Brunt. You've got Christensen. I think this squad is capable, and I think we're hopefully going to prove that today, of going straight back up, winning this Championship. You're going to have to fight with Southampton. And so that, as I said before, it's a really strong Championship, but I think this is capable of winning this league. I'm going to go and find out if Enzo Maresca's system can go and do that by simulating now until the end of the season. Hopefully they come back up. Maybe I'll do a bit of January business too. I'll let you know if I do that as well. But let's find if this Pep from Wish system works and see if we can win this league. I'll see you at the end of the season. And there we go. We've finished the season, and we've won the league. We won the league. I think you might have expected us to win the league. I wasn't quite sure if this system was going to be really, really good or really, really bad. It's ended up being really, really good. We've won the league, but to be honest, only just. If you look at it, Leicester, we've got a ginormous 111 points, but So did Leeds, which maybe just goes to show that these clubs that are being relegated to the Championship in this database are maybe a little bit too strong still. Maybe that needs a little bit of tweaking. Maybe we could have done anything and won this league, but we have just about won it. It was on goal difference in the end by 79 goal difference. We scored 135 goals, which is quite a lot of goals, isn't it? Leeds second. It was Hull that went up in the third playoff place. It was only really, I mean, if you look, Southampton down in 8th, maybe it isn't too OP. Maybe Leeds are just really, really good. I'd like to see, actually, what does that Leeds squad look like? They've got Bruno Lage in as their manager. There's their squad look. I think that's interesting. They've got Datro Fofana in from Chelsea on the right-hand side. Otherwise, it's pretty much the Leeds squad. Nuno Tavares as the left-back would be really good in the Championship, actually. Maybe we'll do a video all about them at some point, but in today's video, we have got ourselves a beautiful 111 points. I'll show you some of the results on here. Look. Some big wins in there along the way. Some big losses, actually. There's a big win against Stoke, look, 6-1. 6-0 win against Carlisle, but that was in the FA Cup. 5-1 win against Swansea in the league. In the Cups, as... well, before we mention the things about the Cups, just want to say we do lose some games. When you do lose a game, you really lose a game. We lost 6-0 to Norwich. I don't really understand why this happened. Joel Perreault missed a penalty and was rubbish, but we just lost 6-0 in that game. I don't know. But other than that, it was pretty good for the rest of the season. We lost 6-2 to Manchester United in the Carabao Cup final. We did great in the Cups. We got to the Carabao Cup final, beating Leeds along the way. We beat... Who else was in that one? Beat Sheffield United. We beat Burnley along the way. We even have made the FA Cup final. We beat Newcastle 5-2, which maybe is a little bit unrealistic. Goes to show that this system is really good. We've got an FA Cup final right now, which I thought I'd mention before we play it, because I'm going to go and play it now and show you the goals and show you the highlights, because I think it's a fun way to end this video. Arsenal at Wembley. Let's go and play it. Okay, so yeah, so we lost that final. It was 3-1 to Arsenal in the end. I've just played it and we were okay, but in the end we were beaten. It wasn't a great start. I'll show you the goals, actually. We might as well look at the goals whilst we're here. It really wasn't a great start. Daniel Everson doesn't cover himself in glory there, running out. Trossard made it 1-0. Maybe we should have signed Zach Steffen, is the takeaway from that, isn't it? Not great from him. We did score a beauty of an equalising goal. Samari with this one. Look at this curler that he scores here. Right past Ramsdale for 1-1. That was pretty much as good as it got for us, because after that, Trossard scored again. It was Saka down the right-hand side. He gives it to Jesus here. There's Jesus over to the other side. Okay, that's not good, is it, from Everson? But oh well. And then finally, right at the end, it was a Jorginho penalty to seal it for Arsenal. Straight down the middle, smashes it. Not in his usual style, but in the end, we lost it. But what a season, considering we're a Championship side. Making that FA Cup final shows that we must have been quite good. We must have had quite a good season. I wanted to show you some of the player stats before we finish off today, because I think most impressively, the thing that I wanted to show you was Patson Daka, 41 goals in 49 games. Could he be their Mitrovic in the Championship if they hold on to him? As I've said a couple of times, I expect one of him or Iheanacho to go. Maybe FM shows that they should hold on to Daka in there. Joel Perreault, by the way, the new signing that we brought in from Swansea, 25 goals from him. Look at this as well. Kiernan, Dewsbury Hall, 32 assists. That is maybe the most outrageous thing I've ever seen. Maybe. Those were set pieces, though. I set the set pieces up pretty good in this system, because Harry Souttar got 24 goals from those set pieces as well. What I will do, because I know you're going to ask this, I know it's going to be in the comments, this tactic will be on my Patreon. If you want to download the Pep from Wish 3421, it will be on my Patreon, along with the save files. We'll have the day one save file with the updated database, so if you wanted to go and take control of Leicester or Southampton or Leeds in the Championship, you could do so. I'll also update I'll put the save file in when I've done the transfers, in case you wanted to go and do my season. And then at the end of the simulation, which is right now, this save file here will also be on there too. Thank you so much for all of the Claytreon members and the support over on Patreon. It really is appreciated. I want to give back, which is well. I'll put this tactic on there with the other stuff as well, but I think we'll leave it there for today. What a great season. What a great rebuild. I think we've rebuilt them. They're back into the Premier League, and I think they'll be fine from there as well with Maresca. I wonder. I'm very intrigued to how he's going to do as the manager, coming in after being an assistant. Let's find out next season. Thank you so much for watching today. Really appreciate it. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel. We're aiming for 50k. But most importantly, have a lovely rest of your day. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.